Change often looks like a motivation problem. We think we need more willpower, more discipline, more effort. But the power of habit argues that much of human behavior runs on patterns that operate below conscious intention. And that changes how you think about improvement. Because if behavior is repeated through loops, then lasting change is not just about trying harder. It is about understanding the loop itself. Charles Duhigg is a journalist and writer who became interested in how habits shape individuals, organizations, and even societies. His approach is practical. He does not treat habits as abstract ideas. He treats them as systems, patterns that can be observed, understood, and changed. The central idea of the power of habit is that habits work through a loop: cue, routine, reward. A cue triggers behavior, a routine follows, and a reward teaches the brain to remember that pattern. Over time, the loop becomes automatic. This is why habits can feel so strong. Because once a loop is established, behavior no longer requires much deliberate thought. It simply runs. That is one of the most useful ideas in the book, because many people judge themselves too harshly when they repeat unwanted behaviors. They assume failure means weakness. But often what they are really experiencing is automation. And automation is powerful. This also explains why habits are difficult to eliminate completely. Duhigg argues that habits are not usually erased, they are replaced. The cue may stay the same. The reward may stay the same. But the routine in the middle can be changed. That idea matters, because it means that behavior change is often less about removing desire and more about redirecting it. Unlike many self-improvement books, the power of habit focuses less on identity and more on mechanism. It asks, what triggers the behavior? What reward is the brain expecting? What routine has become automatic? That makes the book especially useful for people who want a clearer explanation of why behavior repeats itself. Another strong idea in the book is the existence of keystone habits. These are habits that create ripple effects. They may seem small, but they influence multiple parts of life. Exercise is one example Duhigg discusses. When some people begin exercising consistently, they often start sleeping better, eating better, and making better decisions in other areas too. The point is not that one habit solves everything. The point is that some habits create momentum. And momentum is easier to build on than motivation. Another important idea in the book is craving. Duhigg explains that habits become powerful not only because the loop exists, but because the brain begins anticipating the reward. That anticipation is what helps drive repetition. In other words, the habit does not begin only when the action starts. It often begins when the mind starts expecting what comes after. This helps explain why some patterns feel so difficult to interrupt, because part of the loop is emotional, not just behavioral. The book also explores how habits operate in groups and organizations. This broadens the argument in an important way. Habits are not only personal. they also shape workplaces, cultures, and institutions. And once those collective habits become normalized, people stop noticing them. That is useful to remember, because sometimes the behaviors you repeat are not only your own. They may be reinforced by the environment around you. One of the most practical lessons in the book is known as the golden rule of habit change. Keep the same cue, keep the same reward, but change the routine. This matters because it gives people a realistic way to experiment. If you know what triggers the behavior and what reward the brain is chasing, then you have a chance to redesign the action in the middle. That is far more useful than simply promising yourself to stop. Another useful idea is that awareness comes before control. Before a habit can be changed, it has to be noticed clearly. What time does it happen? What emotion comes before it? What environment reinforces it? What reward follows it? Without that awareness, change stays vague. And vague change usually fails. This is what makes habits so deceptive. They often feel natural, when in reality they are repeated patterns that have simply become familiar. And familiarity is powerful, because the brain prefers what it already knows, even when that pattern is no longer helping you. If you apply one idea from this book, let it be this. When a behavior repeats itself, do not ask only how to stop it. Ask what loop is running. What is the cue? What is the routine? What is the reward? That shift creates a more useful kind of attention. It moves you from self-judgment to investigation. And investigation is where change becomes possible. Strength. The book is clear, memorable, and practical. It gives people a model they can observe in their own lives. Limitation. Some readers may feel that the examples are repeated too often or stretched further than necessary. But even then, the core framework remains strong. In the end, the lasting value of the power of habit is that it makes behavior feel less mysterious. Not easy, but understandable. And once behavior becomes more understandable, change becomes more realistic. If you found this useful, consider subscribing for more structured summaries. And if you'd like to read the full book, the link is in the description.